Okay, so this is September 28th, and we should be finishing up hand sewing and beginning with with our hand closures to prepare us for sewing machine. And how many of you have done at least prepared your fabrics? You should have your fabrics torn and prepared into your 7x7 squares. You'll have approximately 10 of those, 10 to 11 of those, and 6 of those are prepared for your hand sewing samples. How many of you have gone that far? Okay, who would like review of the fabric preparation portion of that part so that you get your fabric samples actually in the right shape so that you can start your hand sewing appropriately? Would that be helpful? Yes, no? We'll
That
just
sounds like it would probably be helpful.
yeah, anybody? Ezra, did you finish yours?
No, I haven't yet.
What?
I have not yet.
Okay, did you get your fabric in the right shape?
Some of them, but review would be good.
Okay, and Smenson, how about you? Did you get your fabric in the right shape?
Oh, not really.
Okay, then you know what I think? This is what I would like to do right now. We'll take a 5-minute pause so everyone can get their materials set up. We're gonna work through the fabrics to get our squares in exactly the right shape and in exactly the right size, and that they are all on grain so that then we can go forward, okay? So let's take just a 5, grab all your equipment so that you have, are you all set to go, Cara, or is this helpful for you too? Good. So let's get our fabrics, and then we will make sure that all the fabric is uniform and we get that all set up so that you're ready to go. And then if you have any questions regarding the stitches, we'll do that second, okay? So it's a 5 to grab everything together that you need. And I too will grab my things. Okay, I'm gonna just pause this. I'm sorry, I forgot to pause recording. Okay, there's a reason why we're doing this. So just here's my little sample pile from last time. But remember, this is our one sample piece of fabric in the kit. And this is showing us the selvage, which is the straight of grain. Opposite that is a straight of grain. The lengthwise, and we generally call the lengthwise the straight of grain. The crosswise is the interlocking piece. Remember, a woven fabric is two pieces of yarn interlocking at 90 degrees. It wraps around this piece. When it wraps around, that's why it creates the selvage. So it goes this way, wraps, creates a finish on this side. So we have lengthwise and crosswise grain. If we can pull a thread all the way down, you have a straight of grain. And we talked about why that is easy to find, because fabric tears on the straight. So you can actually tear your fabric and it will be on the straight of grain. Then, and does anyone remember what this diagonal is about? What that's called? So this is a 90 degree and we laid the L square down, and this is a 45. And at 45, we get the bias. So that is a stretch. Remember that the lengthwise grain does not stretch, does not stretch. The cross has a bit of ease. You can see I can move that a little, but the bias truly has a lot of stretch. Okay, so that's one reason why I want to keep it on. And I'm just gonna pin this so that we can, I'm sorry, we should actually.
No, that's no problem. I'll call you back around 11. Okay, 11.
Okay, so now we'll be looking at this again. Okay, here's my piece of fabric. My lengthwise grains. Yeah, you can't see that. All right, the lengthwise grain is here. The crosswise wraps around, creates a selvage. Remember, it's like stealth. Edge. It creates a finish so that this is a finished line on this side. When we take this 90 degrees and cut it at 45, 45 degrees, and the bias stretches. Okay. When you see a vertical line on a pattern, that is referring to the lengthwise grain. So I'm refraining from using an arrow here, and just know that this arrow is referring to the lengthwise grain. Okay, the lengthwise grain is better going up and down the body. So on my shirt, this is the lengthwise grain. It goes up and down the body because the crosswise grain needs a little more stretch and go around the body for sitting and that kind of thing. Okay. Again, we're talking about not like this, which has stretch. We're talking about something that is a woven fabric. So the first thing you do when you get your fabric prepared, just move this over. You have a large piece of fabric. You're going to measure in approximately 7-inch increments. When you do this, you will then snip to make a small cut of about 2 inches that you can pull your fingers on each side and rip your fabric, and it will rip all the way across your fabric, all the way across your fabric. And this will be on the straight of grain so that you will end up with pieces of fabric that are like this. This is my fabric piece. Remember, that's really funny, right? It's 7 inches. So you get used to measuring, and that's why my drawing is exactly 7 inches. But I measured my fabric so that I looked at my fabric and taking the most economical 7 inches, it was 22, knowing that there's a little bit of waste here for cutting, a little bit of waste, so maybe 7 1/4, and then from this side, another 7 1/4. So they end up with this. I end up with strips like this. And then I'm ready to mark my 7-inch increment here. So let's everybody do this now. Lay your fabric out. You can use your measurement, and I'll show you how I'm using mine. Now I cut some of mine before. So you'll see that I have mine flattened, the ones that I cut before. Here's my 7-inch squares. Remember, we need about 10 7 by 7. So this is our cut list. You guys can be working as we go along. So we're going to need 10 7-inch by 7-inch squares. We want to end up with 10. We have 6 hand sewing samples and 4 machine. And if you have more than that, we could use 11. So now I'm going to take my whatever measuring thing that you have. If you have a see-through ruler, you have a flexible tape measure like the one I showed you. I'll get that out. I always have one in my purse. Actually got into an art class once because I had scissors. I had foldable scissors. So this is a flexible tape measure. And you can see that I keep it wound up very small. If I measure from 1, and we're working in inches for any of you who are metric, 1 to 7, okay? And then I'm going to make a mark. Again, on this, I told you can use a graphite pencil. So just get your fabric down, 1 to 7, and make a mark. You can use a regular old ruler. Actually, here, I'll get that for you too. When we went home in March and we couldn't come back, this was the ruler that I was using at home, right? A really old wooden ruler, but anything that gives you a good measurement, and a good straight edge is very helpful. So if you don't have a straight edge, I'll tell you what you can do. So I want to make sure that I'm on my 7. And I'm marking. Make sure that you can see it, but it doesn't have to be gigantic. And then I'm going to mark again. Everyone should be working on this. Again. The most important piece of this is the ripping. You want to make sure. And Cara had this question. It's like, well, what else can you do besides rip? And remember, there's that very laborious process of pulling a thread. So I'm doing 2 cuts, putting my hands on both sides of the cut. So I am really firmly holding it and pulling. And I'm going to do the same with the second, making sure my scissors are perpendicular to my fabric edge because I want to make sure I'm cutting on the straight of grain. And then I'm going to pull on the straight of grain. And I have my 3 samples. I want you to continue this process until you have really 11 is good. So it distresses the edge a little, so I'm pulling my finger along the thread edge to straighten the thread out and to remove any extraneous threads. Okay, so it's just flat. Good. I hear ripping. Keep going.
So Pam, last Thursday I did the whole material and I ended up getting 14.
Perfect.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if I'd used up some material I shouldn't have, but I just did the whole thing. So.
You know, the thing is we use, as you found out, you have that great 60s piece. We use just pieces of fabric that we have, and we give people approximately 7/8 of a yard. So some people have 2 pieces. This particular folder, we had 2 pieces of fabric. And so then if you have yours like this, the next thing, you want to make sure that all of the edges are completely even. So if you've done that, you want to, so this edge is not, I can see that's not even. I'm going to have to tidy that up and straighten that edge. And so if you've got your 14, then you can start preparing 6 of them into the hand sewing model, which is this, where it is folded up 2 inches, folded under 3/8 of an inch first. I mean, we used to do 1/4 and 1 3/4, but that tended to be too small. So you can fold up between 3/8 and a 1/2 inch here, and then you fold up bottom, and this is going to create your hem allowance so that you're taking the right side and the wrong side. You're folding the right side up to the wrong side. So you can prepare 6 of them in the folded pattern. Okay. So I'll put that on the board too, so that we have that really clearly delineated. Once you get, let me just shift this to 11 because this folders we need 11. We've sent you additional fabrics for your understitching, and you have another piece for your ruffle, so you don't need to worry about that. So again, then you will need 6 folded hem pieces. Okay. And sewing hems, they'll be folded. First fold, I like 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch. Second fold, I'm just going to write fold. One and 3/4 to 2 inches. Here's the thing. It's not that you're going to fold it unevenly, but you do, because the fabric may not be exactly right. What we don't want is we don't want it to be 1 3/4 at this side and 2 inches on this side. We want this to be absolutely even. Okay. We want this to look even. And so if I fold my 2 folded pieces together, I'm getting exactly the same hem allowance. All right, so the hem allowance will be uniform. So when you're finished with doing your 11 7x7 pieces, you're taking it off. You may need to do that multiple times, and then you'll prepare them so that you have 6 like this. Are you good with that, Cara? You've got your 6 folded. Ezra?
Mine is like, I like did the little marks here, and if I pulled it down, it'd be super long. So are you supposed to, because yours are more square-like.
Okay, so let me do double so we can look at your fabric too.
So it's like this.
Right, so here's the way, this is a
And I
really,
marked at the top here, like 7 inches.
but I'm gonna ask you to do something different. So hold your fabric out again. So you see that Ezra's fabric, and in your left hand, she has the selvage. See, it's white. That's her selvage edge. So that's actually the lengthwise grain. You have a short lengthwise grain and a lot of width. So the width of your fabric is what we're seeing. And that's, what is that? Have you measured it? Looks like it could be, hold it out all the way. So it could be about 60 inches, or else it's 48. Okay. So ideally, go ahead and mark the white edge
Okay.
in your 7. And then as you go along, you'll make 2 strips, right? You'll make 2 marks along your white edge. So go ahead and do that. And then
7 inches.
at 7 inches on the white part, that's your selvage. Then you're going to snip that and you will tear that piece and you'll end up with like 3 kind of long scarves. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Okay, so go ahead and do that. Then those long pieces, you know, which will be long, way longer than this, they'll be 3 times as long. Then you will mark those in your 7 and cut them. Okay.
Okay.
So if you're already up to this portion, everybody, and you have your already prepared with this in your folded area. So they are folded up. So it's folded this way. Okay. It should not be off kilter like that. I am simply doing that as a drawing so that you can see that it's folded up. Yours should not be off kilter. And then your folded piece is under here. That's the raw edge. So this is number 1 here. First fold. That's this. And this is your second fold on this. Your 2 inch. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. I'm just going to pause the recording here while we finish this portion. So to iron, do what we call finger pressing without an iron. You spray your sample. And of course, you wouldn't do this if you were working on a silk or a velvet, something like that. But in our samples, it works. It works for, I learned it because of handkerchiefs. So you can just roll them together. And my mom actually made them into a ball like this, but you can just roll it. And then when you're done, you'll feel uniform moisture. And you can take this. So if you wait a few minutes, this moisture, you see the dark part, will spread. It will wick through the fabric, and everyone understands that from sort of the whole perspiration and people trying to get perspiration out. But so I know that's my cross. That's my straight. I want to keep on the straight and have all my pieces straight. And I can fold this up. And with my fingers, because it's damp, I can actually fold it in place. And you can make that even. The heat of your fingers, remember our body temperature is 98. So it will actually fold this like magic. And then I can push this up and get it into my size that I want. And then I'm going to press that again. And then if you need, so that's pretty nicely pressed. And if you need additional pressing, you can take a straight edge like this and just go along your piece. And then put your 2 pins in so that you've got your pieces set. And then when they dry, they'll be as pressed as anything else. So that's something you can do until your iron gets here. It works if we had to open up a seam too. So let me just show you. If I take this out, you can see the creases and how well pressed it actually is. And there's a pretty specific crease here. I'll show you both sides. There's my.
That's cool. Does the water need to be warm or hot or anything? No?
This
Wow.
I ran and got this out of the makeup room. You can see it's one of the things we use there. They just spray it. I mean, you know how you use it for hairdressing and stuff. So just plain old water, stick it in and then spray it. Then you'll be able to finger press pin these in place so that you don't feel like you're being held up. You know, an iron, of course, will help you, but in a pinch, sorry, that was not, there we go. This is, but in a pinch, it works just fine. I'm just removing a small increment of fabric like this. This is not able to be pulled. This will just distress the fabric. This is when you would want to do that technique of pull the thread. So I have a thread that I'm pulling. And on the back side, you can see that I've displaced the color of the fabric, and then I can cut right along that piece. And that will create my straight of grain. So because it is such a narrow piece, I really can't pull that successfully. I'll just destroy it. So I'm just going to straighten this piece, I'm just going to cut it along that thread that I've pulled. And I have to stop and pull my thread again because I can only go so far. You want to try and make sure you're on the thread. You can see that I'm a little bit off the thread there. There we go. That's good on that side. And I'll be able to get a piece going all the way down, and then I can. Okay, and then remember to gather up your threads so that they are on the side. Okay. Hemming, stitch, and locked hemming. So once you have your 6 samples folded and ready to go, and the reason why I'm having you do this is when you work in costume, you want to maximize your time. So you try to work things in a manufacturing way. So we cut all of our pieces, we prepare all of our pieces for our hand sewing. We now have 6 hand sewing samples like this. And then we will execute the 6 hand sewing samples that you were taught last Wednesday. The running stitch, number 1. The back stitch all the way across, number 2. Slip stitch, catch stitch, hemming stitched, and locked hemming. So each sample will proceed all the way across the 7 inches. Starting here, if required, there will be a knot that will be placed inside the fold and continuing across. Any questions about your 6 samples? Because I'm going to screen share in a moment and I will show you exactly how you're going to mount the prepared sample. Okay, so again, to make the initial knot, you need to do a knot that works with 1 thread. So I'm going to thread this through the hole. The hole is facing me, and I'm going to push my thread through that hole. And then I'm going to pull it on the other side. So once I'm through the hole, remember my left hand is not moving. Only one hand is just thrusting that thread through the hole. And I can see my thread bending. It doesn't want to go through. So you don't have much thread, maybe ½ an inch showing, and I'm pushing it through the needle eye, and that's the hole in the needle. I actually like sewing with a small needle, so that's part of my problem. So you can see my thread is through there, and I'm holding it now here in my hand. I'm pulling it through. And I'm using thread that is no longer than from my wrist to my elbow. I take one end of my thread, the loose end, and I'm wrapping it around my finger to create an X. I'll get that closer. My finger's very dirty here. It's because of the board. So I'm creating an X on my finger.
Wait, is this with the longer piece or the shorter piece?
A longer piece. So you can,
Okay.
here's my needle, here's my piece that's shorter, and here's my longer piece. So that's my X.
And
Roll it off the end of my finger. And now I have a little bit of a looping happening. And then I'm going to pinch that and pull it, and it creates a knot. And there's my knot.
okay, so does the X, I don't even know how to do that.
Cut it off and do it again.
It's like that.
Here's my longer finger. I'm going to wrap it around my middle finger so that I create an X. So there's my end of my thread right here. Right? And here's my, I'm holding on to the rest of the thread. I'm rolling it off and then making my knot. And there's my knot right there. It's pretty small. I'm going to make a second one. You can roll it off your index finger if that's better for you, and then pinch it against your thumb. Use your third finger to pull it, and now I have a knot. So there's my knot.
See, mine is like really tiny, like you can't even see
So
it.
just do a second one on top of it.
Okay.
That's what I just did. Just roll it over your finger like this and do a second one, okay? And then that knot, if you're starting with back stitch, because that's your second piece, you want to put that right here in the fold, which we discussed. Put it right in the fold so that you're ready to pull that out so that we can do back stitch, which means we're going back 1/8 of an inch and coming out 1/8 of an inch, just like our sample, okay? So let me know if you have any other questions. Excellent question. Just a review of the knot. Okay, I'm going to screen share. Yeah. Okay, that's weird. That's weird because now I can't go to screen share. Okay, so let's see if I can go to screen share now. Okay, interesting.